Okay, so when you hear NASA's Artemis program, what comes to mind? Probably rockets, astronauts, right? But here's the thing. This is way more than just a science experiment. Our sources are calling Artemis the single largest and most expensive infrastructure project in all of human history. And its heartbeat? Well, it's African.
I mean, look at this, the moon. For so long, it was just a place for flags and footprints, but that's all changing. We're now looking at it as the bedrock of a brand new trillion-dollar space economy. Think lunar mining, manufacturing in orbit. It's the gateway to Mars and beyond.
You know, every massive industrial project has a supply chain, right? A hidden engine room that makes it all possible. The pyramids had the Nile. The Industrial Revolution had coal. So what's powering this new lunar economy? What's its foundational supply chain? Well, the answer is probably not what you're expecting. To really get it, we need to dig into what makes this new race to the moon so incredibly different from what we've seen before. Trust me, this is not just Apollo 2.0. Yeah, the Artemis program is a total game changer. It's a complete paradigm shift. See, the goal isn't just to pop in for a visit, it's to stay. We're talking about permanent infrastructure here. Things like lunar gateway stations, habitats right on the surface, even power grids. The moon is basically becoming an industrial park. And to build all that, you're going to need a ton of material. And this is where a very old, familiar story crashes into a very new frontier. To really grasp Africa's potential role in all this, we first have to look back at its historical role, something our sources call the Old Colonial Transaction. It's a pattern we've seen time and time again. Africa digs up and ships out raw ore. Then global powers take that ore and turn it into incredible, high-value tech, like, rockets. And what does the continent get? Just a tiny fraction of the final value, while being left with all the environmental and social costs of digging it up in the first place. This really puts the stakes into perspective. There's a quote from author Grace Mumo that just nails it. The next colonial frontier is not land, it is orbit. It means the systems we're building right now for this new lunar economy could either lock in that same old exploitative pattern, or they could break it for good. Okay, so let's pull back the curtain a bit. Because the truth is, Africa is already powering the Artemis program. It's just happening quietly, almost invisibly, behind the scenes. Here's a way to think about it. To build our future out in space, you need a very specific shopping list of elements. And the argument from our source material is pretty bold. Africa basically holds the entire periodic table for space exploration. This is what we're talking about. This is that lunar artery in action. The absolute lifeblood for these Artemis missions is flowing directly from African soil. That doesn't just make the continent a supplier. It makes it structurally essential to the whole shebang. Let's break this down a bit, because the details are wild. You've got cobalt from the DRC, which, by the way, provides a whopping 70% of the entire world's supply. That's the backbone for all the batteries, for everything from rovers to life support systems. Then there's platinum from South Africa, which is the key catalyst for propulsion. Manganese from South Africa, Gabon, and Ghana. That makes up the actual structural skeleton of the spacecraft. And the rare earths from Namibia and Tanzania, they're what guide it. I mean, literally every single critical part of the mission depends on these minerals. And yet, and this is the crazy part, there's this massive disparity. Our source calls it the sovereign gap. Africa is providing the absolutely critical raw materials that make all of this space exploration possible, but its share of the global space economy, it's less than 1%. It's just a staggering imbalance when you think about it. So what this all boils down to is a crucial choice. The continent is standing at a crossroads, facing a fundamental decision about what its role is going to be in this brand new era. And here's that choice laid out plain and simple. You have the old way, the old paradigm. That means you just keep being a price taker for your raw materials, basically repeating that old colonial model. But then there's the alternative, what's being called the sovereign shift. That's about becoming an equity owner by moving up the value chain, actually building an economic footprint that extends off-planet, and developing your own sovereign industrial power. This quote really distills the entire idea down to its core. Raw materials create transactions, processing creates sovereignty. It's the huge difference between just selling the stuff you dig out of the ground and actually owning the technology that transforms that stuff into something amazing. So the big question is, how does this sovereign shift actually happen? I mean, it's a great idea, but how do you do it? Well, the source material doesn't just point out the problem, it actually lays out a clear, actionable blueprint to get there. And it comes down to 5 key steps. First, and this is a big one, move from just mining to processing. Build the battery factories, the alloy plants right there in Africa. Second, get strategic about negotiating within the Artemis Accords. Those are the new rules for the moon. Third, build up African space agencies so they're not just scientific bodies but real industrial players. Fourth, invest heavily in training a new generation of space engineers and scientists. And finally, create a dedicated African space investment fund to make it all happen. Now, we're not talking about some minor policy tweak here. The sources frame this as a defining generational choice for Africa's leaders today, a choice with consequences that could echo for 100 years or more. And really, it all boils down to a few really sharp questions. The first one is about GDP. If Africa is providing something like 70% of the critical materials, why is its space GDP, the money it makes from the space industry, less than 1%? It just doesn't add up. Then there's the architecture question. Is the vision here just stuck on earthbound systems and trade, or is it about architecting for a future that actually includes a lunar economic zone? That's a huge shift in perspective. And that brings us to the final and maybe most important question, the equity question. It basically sums up the whole choice. In this new race for Artemis, is the continent going to be a simple price taker or a true equity owner? And all of this leaves us with a really powerful final thought. The core argument here is that Africa's destiny, its greatest potential value, might not be what's beneath the ground anymore. It's what's beyond the atmosphere. So the question is no longer if Africa can be a part of the space economy. The real question is, will Africa choose to lead it?